Yet Zambia is also a country full of life and commerce. Economic growth has been slow, yet consistently present. Literacy levels are among the highest in Africa, and a burgeoning tourist trade has begun to take root. Zambia is a country of mixed fortunes, but constant hope. And ever present during this struggle has been a small number of dedicated missionaries, caregivers, and teachers.
I came to Zambia in August 1955 with two other Irish companions and one Belgian companion. We flew from London, took the mailboat over to England and went on to London, flew from there, and it took 3 full days of flying to come out here. We only flew by day, stayed in a hotel by night and flew on, Central African Airways. It was a very interesting journey out, but I arrived in the middle of August 1955. I've been here ever since then, apart from going back to Ireland and to England for long periods of studies. I went to Ireland in 1958 and did my theology studies and was ordained priest at Milltown Park, and came back here then in '63. And then again I went in 1970 to England, to the University of Birmingham, and did a couple of degrees there, including my PhD, and came back here in the end of '74, beginning of '75. Well, it was a much smaller country, if you like, in the sense that the population was very, very much smaller. Population in Zambia at present is 12 or 13 million. At that time it was barely 3 million, I think. And that meant that you very much smaller in the towns, very much smaller in the rural areas, and so services that were there for the people had to reach fewer people, and so it was possible for them to reach the people. But there was still a great deal of poverty, a great deal of sickness and death among the people at that time, and there was a huge, huge demand for education, and I was out, among others, to try and respond to that. And that demand for education was partly fueled by people wanting to better themselves and develop themselves, but also there were prospects of good employment if you had some kind of education, and of course that was a great asset to the people. Well, the major social problem is the poverty within the country, with about 2/3 of the people in rural areas living well below the poverty line of $1.25 a day, and about 40% of them in the urban areas, much the same. But the poverty then is linked with so many different things. There's a huge discrepancy between the control of resources and incomes between the rich and the poor. The richest 10% are controlling about 50% of national resources. The poorest 10% are controlling about 0.5% of national resources. A colossal gap there, and the gap doesn't really narrow until you're up in about the top 20%. So that gap and the lack of social cohesion that it involves, that's a major problem with the poverty. Joblessness. We've got a very, very young population. Half the population of Zambia is below the age of 15, which is a very, very young population. There are no jobs for these people. Now, you can't create millions of jobs overnight, that's clear, but formal employment is not being created sufficiently rapidly, and resources are not being poured into the country, rural areas, to promote the development of agriculture and to make it a worthwhile thing. So I think they are some of the major problems. There are the problems of illness. HIV and AIDS is one of them. Malaria is a very, very severe problem currently, and still tuberculosis is a major problem, and all of these can be overcome if we had the resources and the networks of clinics and so forth to distribute whatever medication and whatever information is needed, including treated bed nets to stop malaria. These are going down, but they are still very, very strong amongst us. It's still a very, very serious problem. We've learned to live with it. and we've learned to grow dull almost to the figures that are talking about it, but the problem is still very serious. I said the population was 12, 13 million. 1 in every 8 of those people is infected with the virus. About 350,000 are in need of antiretroviral therapy, and all credit to the national authorities, almost 300,000, I suppose, by now are receiving that therapy, which is excellent, a very good record there, but still more needs to be done. More needs to be done to get the treatment out to every person, but also more needs to be done to stop the infection from transmitting from one person to another. Jesuits can do anything and everything, or try to do anything and everything, so they have been doing a large number of different and diverse things. First, in their parishes, they are doing the work there, mainly reaching out to the people who are infected, helping them with home-based care and other areas, giving pastoral guidance and counselling, helping with information and assistance, that people understand what is causing the disease and how it can be stopped, helping to reduce stigma and discrimination by associating with people who are known to be infected. These things are taking place at parishes. Another major work taking place at parishes is work for the orphans, various responses for orphaned children, and then not just at parishes but maybe collective works across the country. For instance, there's an organisation here called ZOCS, Zambia Open Community Schools, and these were started largely in response to the needs of orphans as well as of girls who couldn't afford to get into the regular schools, and Jesuits have been associated with them from the very early day. Another major area, my namesake, Father Michael T. Kelly, also a Jesuit, established back in the late 80s or early 90s what's called Cara Counselling, a whole service of work to counsel and guide people and assist them, those who are infected or affected by the disease. And that has done remarkable work over the last 15, 20 years now. And all credit to Michael Kelly for what he has done in that area, and to those who are continuing that work. He's no longer in it. So there are those works, and then through JCTR there is a great deal of awareness raising and bringing the matter to the information of people through seminars, through workshops, and through the JCTR bulletin. And then I myself do a lot of work around Zambia, well, not so much around Zambia as here in Lusaka and in areas which are near enough to Lusaka, 200 miles away, say, talking with different groups of teachers, with sisters, with lay people, and various civil society organizations. And then outside of Zambia, I also do a good deal of work talking with various groups, and I do a lot of writing and publication. Yeah, home-based care originated in Uganda, spread very early to Zambia, and Zambia is actually, I think, the real home of it. And the home of it was not Catholic, it wasn't Jesuit, it was the Chicken-Kata people who were the Salvation Army. They were the ones who started home-based care, but it was very quickly picked up by all of the churches as something that this is the way for us as communities to respond to HIV and AIDS. And one of the key principles from UNAIDS, the United Nations Joint Programme for responding to HIV and AIDS, is that it must have grassroots involvement. And that grassroots involvement is guaranteed through home-based care. That doesn't mean that there are not problems with it. And one of the problems we highlighted at a conference in Galway just 2 years ago, sponsored by Irish Aid, was that home-based care puts an intolerable burden on women, because it is presumed that it's women and girls who are going to provide the home-based care. And Stephen Lewis, he didn't say it in Galway, but he said it on another occasion, he said it is an absurd misnomer for the exploitation of women. That's a bit strong, I think, but women are wonderful, the way they have responded, even women who are sick themselves, responding in the provision of home-based care. It has helped to knit communities together. It has helped to reduce a great deal of the stigma that is involved here. And of course, it has given sustenance to the people who are sick and also to the orphans. But the whole character of that is changing because of the availability of antiretroviral therapy. Home-based care used to be looking after people who are almost inevitably going to die of a very troublesome and very painful illness. That's no longer the case. But there is still a great need for it, because even though I said earlier that about 300,000 people may be on antiretroviral therapy, we also have to face the fact that there's about 800,000 or 900,000 who are not on that therapy, not on it yet. Some of them should be on it, they're not on it. These are the people who still need the home-based care, as well as the ones who are on it, of course, to help them to maintain their drug regimen and to stay with it. The evidence from Zambia is that people are very, very faithful normally to their drug regimes. Much more faithful than people are in the United States or in Europe, and that is an excellent thing, and home-based care is helping towards that. It's helping people to live, and to live a decent life. My feeling is that they're viewed with a great deal of respect, and as the number of Zambian and Malawian Jesuits is increasing, a great deal more that these are ours, these are our people. For the most part, the Jesuits who've come here have come to stay. Even the expatriates, many of them are buried out in our cemetery in Kasisi, and people realize that once a Jesuit is here, a Jesuit is not going to leave them or to abandon them, and they find a great deal of strength in that. They look to them for guidance, for counselling, and they are aware that Jesuits are supposed to be intellectual leaders, if you like, be able to speak to intellectual issues and speak well on certain issues. I don't think that's always true, but people have that myth, which is a myth that exists in many other parts of the world. But I think that people like their Jesuits, respect them and honour them, and are very pleased that they are with them and working with them. That doesn't mean that they might not find occasionally that as Jesuits we're a little bit aloof, that we kind of live, I won't say in an ivory tower, but within that, what would you call it, embryo of the intellectual work and the intellectual apostolate, and that may keep us a little bit away from people. Certainly in the early days, before we began to have a larger number of Zambian Jesuits, social interaction, going to people's homes and that, was not a very marked feature, and I think that that is something that is important for the people. Although it would be now in rural areas, but I suppose I'm thinking more of the urban areas, there would be less of that. My goodness. I think the greatest achievement is that now, of our total number, about half of us are Zambians or Malawians. In other words, that we've achieved our death. That is the death of a person like me who was born elsewhere and came into the country, that we have localized the Society of Jesus, Jesuits within Zambia, and it's becoming stronger and stronger locally. I think that that is one of its major achievements overall. Then there are other areas, of course. The work that has been done from Chikuni through its secondary school, Canisius, and through its teacher training college, Charles Wanga, and in general in education in Zambia, has been absolutely colossal. Then a further area of impact is what's been done through the JCTR. On the social apostolate and social issues and social questions, keeping the whole issue of poverty and of the need to use our resources in a manner that assists the people of the country, that this is making a colossal impact. And then, even though I was associated with it myself, I feel that I should mention the work at the University of Zambia. At the university, it's not just that I was Professor of Education. There's a Professor of Philosophy there. He's the longest serving member of the university community as far as I know. We have the chaplaincy there, and in the past we've had people in biology and people in other areas, in economics and other areas within the university. There has been a very significant Jesuit presence at the University of Zambia, and now currently also at the University of the Copperbelt, and this is, I think, has also made a very significant impact for good within the country. I do, yes. I think Zambia would be very much the poorer without them. That this concern about social issues, I don't say that the Jesuits are the only ones who are stimulating this to go on, and concern about the AIDS issues and so forth. These things would not have been so prominent, I think, were it not for the work that the Jesuits are doing. And then in the area of education, nearly all of the education policies that exist within Zambia had a Jesuit hand in them, and so the whole education sector has in many ways been guided by Jesuits for the last 50 years. All of that is very, very important for the country, so they have made a difference, and educationally, sociologically, justice-wise, we would be very, very much poorer without the Jesuits. And now a developing apostolate is the apostolate of mass communication, preparing materials for the national TV and for the other commercial TV stations and also radio programs. These would have been missing also were it not for the presence of Jesuits.